Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning meeting. Sean, Dan, and I, delighted to have you here. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
It's good to have everybody back convened. We start the week with a lot of the storylines from last week. We'll run through them. We'll talk about them amongst ourselves, and then we'll take your questions. If you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. Some good hands up already. We always like new people too. So if you haven't ever been a speaker on the platform and you'd like to get in, please raise your hand. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome. This is a little bit different of a discussion than a lot of political media. We're here to educate and learn. If you don't think someone agrees with you, use it as an opportunity to learn from them with peace, love, and understanding. And as always, extending the presumption of grace. The chat is a sewer. If you don't like it, don't read it. And if you do contribute to the chat, maybe don't make it a sewer. Maybe write productive and interesting things rather than inflammatory. But we're glad for everybody's participation. Relatively light schedule in terms of known upcoming public events today. Not much going on the Hill. President Biden is in Rio, where he's attending various G20 events. Everybody say it aloud with me. The vice president's schedule. So be in Washington, D.C., where she will receive briefings and conduct internal meetings with staff. These meetings will be closed press. Donald Trump is in Mar-a-Lago, and anything can happen. As we learned this morning, he might meet with just about anybody, and we'll talk about that. I want to start by talking, guys, about what I call the controversial five, the nominees. Go ahead and put up their pictures, please, who may or may not make it. And there are people who say all five will make it, and people who say none of the five, and people who say some of the five, but have different perceptions. Sean, who are on that list right now? Who are who would you say are the two most unlikely to be confirmed?
I think the obvious answer is Gates and Hegseth. But here's the thing about confirmation hearings. Things come out about individuals, comments get made. Right. So does someone try to trip them up and ask them some random question? I remember there was an ambassador, and I couldn't even remember. I think it was under Obama, and they were asked something about the country they were going to serve, and they couldn't answer the language that was spoken in the country, and it made them look like a fool. Dan,
Noah met with Argentina.
Thank you.
You asked the question.
There's my lifeline. I use that
Yeah.
if I can't phone a friend. But anyway, I say that because it's obvious, right? But I also think that Trump has made it very clear that he wants especially Matt Gaetz to go through. And if you listen to the Sunday show, even the detractors are saying, I'm going to give him a shot. So I say that only because it's the conventional wisdom, but I still maintain that all five get through.
Okay, Dan, which two do you think are most endangered?
I think Hegseth is the most in danger by a lot. I think there's just going to be more of a drip, drip, drip. And we haven't, the focus hasn't even really gotten to some of his more controversial statements that he's made about who should and should not serve and the roles in combat. I actually think Gaetz is going to get through. I think MAGA is going to draw a line and dig in on this one. He's of them. I think they love that people hate him. And so I think there's going to be a staring match between those two camps. I'm not sure who the fifth one is or the second one would be of the five. I think, to Sean's point, if somebody has a bad hearing, perhaps, but I think four of the five will get through, but one gets sacrificed to the confirmation gods.
I don't think I don't think what Dan is saying can be understated. Like Matt is like a deity in MAGA world, and the idea they feel like it's not about him. He is the vehicle. Whereas Pete is not. I mean, he's obviously a co-host on Fox and Friends Weekend, well liked. But he's not. He doesn't have because of the nature of the job. It's not like he's out there the same way that Matt was, going after DOJ and hearings and things like that. It's not. I'm not trying to compare the two in terms of their dedication to the cause. More that Matt has been able to be in hearings where he has these viral clips of him attacking folks from DOJ and railing against them. So for that reason, I don't think that people care. And also the DOJ, they believe, is what was more weaponized than anything else. If you're not a DOD employee, contractor, member of the military, you might not be as passionate about reform in DOD as people. Everyone in MAGA world knows what DOJ has done or not done. And so I think it's the one is a cause celeb, the other isn't. And so for those reasons, I think what Dan said is spot on.
So you guys are much more bullish on his confirmation prospects than the conventional wisdom, or what I call the gang of 500, which is interesting to me. So I just want to explore for a moment. MAGA did not get its choice for Senate Majority Leader.
Yeah.
And I don't get the sense from John Thune's body language that he's going to whip this vote, for Gates. Don't just to play devil's advocate a bit, don't you think the clubbiness of the Senate is going to be immune to what MAGA wants?
So one, remember that Senate majority vote was secret. So they all got to hide behind the secret, I don't want to tell you who my vote was for. Two, Trump didn't weigh in on it. And so no one feels like they went against Trump. I mean, we all know that he would have probably preferred Rick Scott. But at the end of the day, I also think now having to publicly vote against Matt Gaetz for no reason, and again, it's not about Matt. Matt is the vehicle to get justice at the Department of Justice. And so if you vote against Matt Gaetz without any solid evidence, you are going to feel the wrath of MAGA.
Yeah, I totally, I mean, that's why I think this early, unless something comes up between now and that vote where some of Trump's capital bleeds out a little bit, he's going to enter that fight with maximum power. And do you want to start your, the new Congress going to war with the online army so that when you go home, you are just being beat up in town halls? Like, you almost don't even want to show your face. Once you leave Capitol Hill and you go back to the real world at home, you will be tormented. And maybe Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski, but unless like 7 other members are willing to join in, do you want to be the John McCain going like this and have to go home? I just don't see it unless it's a whole bunch of them. There's safety.
And also, everybody talks about this in terms of them being in cycle when they're up for re-election. Dan's right. I mean, for 40 years, you're just going to get the crap kicked out of you. Number one. Number two, you don't think you have to work with the president on anything else? Maybe it's a ag issue, a tariff issue, a project in your district or your state. Like, this is not about 4 or 6 years from now getting reelected. This is about waking up tomorrow and being shunned and not having anyone return your calls, not getting those tours, all the crap that senators care about. They will come after you, and the White House will be told you are persona non grata.
Yeah.
I have to say, although appearances to the contrary, my full-time job is not promoting two-way. I will say all 3 of us are much more bullish on Matt Gaetz being confirmed than the rest of the media. Okay. So if you're watching this show, I will just point out to you, you're being given an opportunity to understand we might end up being wrong. But if he's confirmed, you've heard an explanation here that is not on offer in the rest of the media, which is not just biased against Trump, but tends to cover confirmation hearings of troubled nominees as if they're doomed until the day they either get confirmed or the plug gets pulled. So we'll see. Here's a question. Sean, again, drawing on your expertise of MAGA world and Trump world. I've covered lots of imperiled nominees. I had a relative who went through a very bruising confirmation process. You want a Sherpa, you want a coordination between your allies on the Hill and the transition, or the White House if the administration's taken over. MAGA seems like extremely disorganized. Like, you've got Hegseth, he's being defended by his private lawyer who's out there saying stuff that seems like a little bit off message. So is there any organization, like if you're a nominee like Matt, and again, Matt is like an entrepreneur. He may not care that he doesn't have a machine, but are they gearing up? Are they hiring people? If not, like, are they going to?
So the chatter that I've gotten, and I'm not in on everything, so I'll dig on this a little for tomorrow. But from what I understand, the people that I'm talking to around the nominees, they're not. When I talk to the nominee and say, "Hey, who's your person?" It's somebody from their person, literally.
Yeah, their outside person.
Their outside person saying, "So and so is helping me with comms. So and so is helping me with this."
Right.
So I don't know if they're not being provided it from the transition and they're shunning it. They want their person to defend them, or the transition's not doing it. I'll get some more on this for tomorrow. But as I told you, I mean, in 2016. We provided that cover for them, the background checks, the murder boards. We went and did all that. We Sherpered them up to set up their meeting. Jeff Sessions said, "I don't want it. I'm going to do my own." So I mean, his view was, I'm a United States senator. I know these are my colleagues. I know who can defend me the best, and I don't need your stupid system.
Right.
So you're going to get some people who probably think that. I would argue that, depending on who you are, Matt Gaetz obviously knows the system a little bit better. My understanding is JD's making calls for him as well. So he's got a pretty good whatever. But if you're Pete Hegseth, who's never served in government before, you might want to rely on some folks who've been around the block a few times. So I think it depends on who you are as a nominee, what you want, because having those relationships where you can call and say, hey, my wife used to work for the senator that's on armed services, or I used to be buddies with his LD. Like, those are the things that somebody can bring to the fight.
Or have his biggest bundler call him and say, stop going on TV and being lukewarm about this guy. I have found, again, even though I tend to agree with you guys about where this is headed, I have found the negativity at body language and words of a lot of Republican senators surprising, but not surprising, because it's clear they're not hearing from anybody. They're not being told, like, keep your powder dry, be more positive. And not necessarily dispositive about whether they're going to be confirmed, but it certainly gives the press a lot to seize on, which is unnecessary. And again, we're in another news cycle where all the transition news is being dominated by the controversial five and the drip, 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 as opposed to messaging, right, on immigration, on the agenda. So, Dan, is this an opportunity for Democrats to step in and create positivity?
You're in the minority. So I think the only way you can get on offense is if you have a piece of opposition research that really kind of blows up the day, gets, the Republicans scramble, try to find out what's going on. Otherwise, I do wonder, just following some of these Trump political people, on social media, it does appear that some of them, as they should do, have gone on vacation. Like Chris LaCivita was hunting out west. Susie, I do wonder if after a campaign, you're so exhausted, you take a few days. Some people are writing thank you notes, some are applying for jobs. But as the gang gets back into town, a little bit decompressed, if the Trump war room and other things don't rev up and start aiming their cannons on behalf of some of these nominees, because it's so quick, like he's spitting them out so fast, that I don't really think the political side was organized for this fight. They have the Senate, so they know it's just their side that they have to hold. They don't have to go win Joe Manchin and a bunch of Democrats. So I think for Democrats, again, I think if I were the Democrats, I would train my fire on just one or two of these. See if you can get some opposition research. See if you can spring at a hearing. Do they use the majority they have for the next 45 days to try to stir the pot a little bit? But otherwise, I think it's can you fracture the Republican Party?
Real quick,
this were a normal
can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
The one thing that's important on that is, again, Mark, to your point about what you're hearing here that you won't hear anywhere else. I was thinking about exactly what Dan was saying a couple of days ago. When you're the staff, if you will, right? So someone like me, or now Stephen Chung and Caroline Levitt, you're angling for your own job. And so you're trying to do the work of the transition, but you're also kind of like, where am I in this world? And if I get cut out, it's a very awkward, I wasn't named until December 22nd. And so you're doing all this work of the transition, but you're also kind of you're like, what am I doing for employment on January 20th? And so
where's my office? Who do I get to hire? There's a million.
Right, but also, am I going to get hired? Who's shooting at me? Because as I'm worried about putting out Ambassador so-and-so or Brendan Carr for the FCC, is Bobby or Susie taking arrows at me to not be whatever job I want? So the point that Dan's making, right? The staff is what has been helpful in the last 96 hours is we named Stephen Chung comms director, Caroline Levitt as press secretary. It now gives them the ability to go back to, and I'm not saying they were, I know my own headspace. To now say, okay, I'm back in the transition 100%, because now I don't have to worry about the me part of this. And I know. Well,
you still have to worry about where your office is and who you're going to hire.
Well, not really. I mean, the press secretary's office is what it is, but
yes. Sean, if this were any other president-elect, the transition would be a disaster. There's no coverage of anything but imperiled nominees. There's no coverage about his agenda. I mean, there's some, but it's subsidiary. Do you think Donald Trump minds all this negative coverage?
I don't think he views it that way. I think he
I
loves
agree.
the coverage. He loves the idea that they're talking about him, their agendas, and what they're going to do. I mean, because part of like what they're talking about isn't just Matt Gaetz bad. It's here's what he wants to do at the Department of Justice. Here's what Pete Hegseth will do to the military. So the agenda is baked into part of the opposition to their nomination.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at the stories, Mark, like in the Washington Post and everything, the stories are they're going to blow up the bureaucracy. They're going to change the way things are. Like if I'm Trump, I love those headlines. What I don't want is somebody sexually assaulted somebody and like they're doing, cocaine with hookers and that would make me nervous. But the other stuff is like, this is what I ran on and the swamp doesn't
I agree with that, but I see those headlines as being bigger. We could talk about Treasury Secretary and NEC for hours. At least I could, because I did a lot of reporting on it over the weekend. Again, most of the focus is on Treasury, but the NEC job is potentially bigger. You look, for instance, at the current administration, where the Treasury Secretary is barely ever seen, and the head of NEC has been a more dominant figure, and that's been true in previous administrations. So if you take their three lists, right? There's Scott Bessent and Lutnick as bucket one. There's the new bucket of Haggerty, Rowan, and Warsh. And then there's what I call bucket / door number 3 of other people who are speculated about. Glenn Youngkin, all sorts of other people. Will the two big jobs, NEC and Treasury, Dan, be filled by door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3?
I think door number 1 gets one of them gets one of jobs.
Yeah. And door number understood.
Yeah.
And so Lutnick or Bessent gets one of the two, and who gets the other job? Door number 2 or door number 3?
Door number 3.
John.
I like door number 3 for a lot. I think that 1 and 2 have done, like, I think Bessent has done a much better public job. And there's a lot, the Lutnick stuff. I mean, I've heard from inside, outside, a lot of, issues with him.
Yes.
And it's just everything from, he talks too much to conflicts of interest.
Yes.
Maybe that's people dishing. So
understood.
Others are saying.
Others are saying.
But I think that in Trump world, like, he likes the surprise element. And so I think the door number 3 element for potentially both jobs is open.
No, potentially. Lock in. Who gets the jobs?
I think
Dan says one. Dan says one gets one.
I think
Dan gets one, and 3 gets one. What do you say?
Yes, I think Bessent gets one of the two. My guess is probably Treasury, and then 3 is door number 3 gets NEC.
All right, I'm going to go with door number 1 and door number 2 as each getting one job. And Howard could be an ambassador. I think
it's ironic that Cantor Fitzgerald is known on Wall Street as being incredibly aggressive, rough, and tumble, and uncouth. Therefore, it's not surprising the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, rough and tumble and aggressive and uncouth. Like
he's not done himself a ton of favors with a lot of people. We're not going to talk today about Boris against Elon because it's too inside. But man, we got to talk about that probably tomorrow night at our live event. All right, Trump and the left. The talk of the world this morning is something that happened on MSNBC at 6 o'clock. Let's listen.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political.
Dan, how will the left feel about that?
I mean, just looking at social media here, they're split. I mean, I think there are some people that think they went there because they fear being prosecuted, and they're doing it, simply for ratings. And other people who think the party needs to kind of move past calling Trump Hitler and a fascist and start actually engaging with the kind of the other half of the country. So my bet is the answer lies somewhere in between. They are business people, and MSNBC continues to struggle a little bit. And Trump was gold for them in 15 and 16, or at least part of 16. And I think they do recognize that, like, what they did in terms of just trashing the hell out of them didn't work with ratings, and it didn't work politically for the party.
Yeah. They're my close friends, I'll say, for those who don't know. Sean, what will MAGA think about this, and why did Trump do it?
I think MAGA will be kind of split the same way the left is. There are some people who say, hey, Trump gets to do what Trump gets to do. Here's my problem with this. When you ended the clip, Joe says afterwards, we told him we opposed him on this. We opposed him on that. We opposed him on this. If they wanted to come down and say, hey, Mr. President, we bashed you. We said you were wrong on all these issues, and we were wrong, and you have the right now to govern, and we'd like to open up communications. First of all, I still say get in the back of the line. There are people who put up yard signs. There are people who made phone calls. There are people who fought hard for President Trump. They get to shake his hand first, not these people who spent 7 years, as Mika said, trashing the guy, lying about him, defaming him, right? So you go to the back of the line before you get to jump it and come up to Mar-a-Lago and shake his hand. But it wasn't that. Joe said we told him to his face that he was still wrong. We disagreed with him. So this was a pure transactional ratings play. This was Joe Scarborough realizing that his ratings are down 40%, 49%. Comcast wants to spin them off, and them worried about whether or not they're going to continue to afford their place on wherever it is, Nantucket, Palm Beach, all those places. This was a pure transactional play, and there's no one that is more transactional in the world than Joe Scarborough. So I was frankly disgusted by this. I think Trump wants them to atone for it, and it was pretty clear by that comment that they have no desire to do that.
So again, talk a little bit. Hold on. Go ahead. You go.
I was going to say, my sense is for Trump, this was like dining with Mitt Romney in 16 and getting photographed. He knows who the beggars are, and I'm sure it gives him, a great pleasure to see that Joe and Mika came to kiss the ring. Like, for him, it's a win.
But that's my point, Dan, is that they didn't. They came and then they
turned. They did. They can say what they want, but he knows.
I know.
Like, they came to see me to make amends with me, and they called me Mr. President, right? Like, end of story.
Sean, do your Trump imitation. Do a stream of consciousness of how he would think about while he's waiting for them to show up.
It's funny because Mika comes down all the time. They came in with Joe and she said, Mr. President, I want you to marry us. And I said, I don't know how to do it. And then, Joe came in and he begs me, he gets down on 2 knees and says, Donald, please let me marry her. I know I need your blessing. And I gave it to him. And now they're horrible to me.
All right. Do you think Trump got out of the meeting what he wanted?
I think he got what Dan said. He wanted them to come in. He probably made them wait 15 minutes. And he walked in and said, oh, you guys were wrong. You've been so horrible to me. And they said, well, we wanted to open the lines of communication. And yes, he got it. But I don't think he'll reward bad behavior like that.
I do think it's interesting it didn't leak. It happened Friday, and they announced they did it, which I find it's a little bit of deference to them.
Well, I think that I think that's a great point, because right now, I don't know how you can, having been down there last week, you can't leak anything. There's not even you can't not leak something.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that I think that's important. They probably just thought we want to get ahead of it with our narrative before he says it.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see what he says about it when he says something about it.
I imagine after that statement, there will be a truth. Probably about...
Yeah, it could happen during this program.
Yeah, and it's going to say something like, Mika and Joe came to beg for forgiveness. The last time she came here, she was,
Yeah. I think your prediction might come true very soon. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. We're going to get to you in just a moment. So if you're here on the two-way platform and you want to ask a question, please do. If you want to psychoanalyze the Trump, Joe and Mika meeting, by all means, Dan and Sean will be happy to analyze your analysis. So over the weekend, there was more back and forth about Nancy Pelosi's role. We still haven't really had the vice president kind of weigh in any serious way about what happened. And you continue to hear from Biden people that Biden should have been the nominee. So, Dan, we're always trying to accentuate the positive here on the D future. Anything happened since we last convened that makes you think the Democrats are on the right side? There've been some op-ed pieces as well, laying out the future of the party. Anything you see that gives you hope?
I think the fact that there is some debate about the DNC chair. There's pushback on Rahm. There's suggestion, people aren't just saying it shouldn't be Rahm or it shouldn't be X. They're saying the chair should be a good person who organizes. They should be good on, social media. Like, this is the conversation that needs to happen. Like, what do you want from the chair? What do you want from the party? As you say, how does Hakeem think about things? I think Schumer's pretty quiet, which I find, interesting. And as you say, Harris and Tim Walz have both been very quiet, probably writing a lot of thank you letters, probably trying to figure out where they go from here. But I think, all this kind of snipping at each other and saying, no, it shouldn't be this person. That's healthy. It really is. It's about the future, not relitigating the past.
I learned this a long time ago before I started working at the RNC. We've mentioned how clubby these institutions are. There's 168 members of the RNC, and Dan, was there like 1,000 members of the DNC?
No, it's less. It's fewer than that, but
anyway, but by the point in this is that you would think they are obviously influenced a little by different people and whatever, but the elected officials and that kind of stuff, like for a lot of these guys, it's personal relationships. The RNC, for the most part, in a non-presidential year, without having the White House, has really never elected a non-168 member, right? So Michael Steele was a former member of the 168. He was the chairman of the Maryland party before he became lieutenant governor, and then he got elected, but he had been a 168 member. And so a lot of times people assume when they race, but there's relationships that go back decades in some cases. And so there's a lot of times when the right choice might not be the one that gets chosen because it's like a big student council race.
Yeah. All right. Maureen is a lot like Mika. Her name starts with M. She lived in New York City. She loves cats, and she thinks a lot about Donald Trump. Maureen, welcome in. What's on your mind?
I wanted to start again.
Yeah.
Regarding the other issue, we got to change hearts and minds. Today, I want to talk about, I made notes, so I'm prepared.
Okay, go ahead.
I put it on yesterday's bulletin, but anyway, I want to talk about welfare under Trump. First of all, his name is Manuel. He's very sick. He's dying.
I'm sorry.
If you pray. Anyway, or send him good thoughts. But you can still bite. Okay. Under Biden, we lost our connectivity program, Lifeline. Now, when I first started welfare 25 years ago, it was very difficult. But I got $1. Lifeline was $1 a month, and I got a ground line. That's through the FCC. SNAP, they have not given us an increase in SNAP under Biden-Harris. SNAP has actually gone down while the price of groceries has skyrocketed. That's the USDA. Medicaid is Health and Human Services. Medicaid is the last time I applied, I didn't have to apply. They kept on rolling it over during Biden-Harris. I didn't have to reapply, but until a month before the federal election. And then the first question is, are you a citizen? If so, write C. They didn't ask me for proof if I was a citizen. Okay. Social Security. I've been on Social Security for 24 years. I've been disabled 25 years. And then Medicaid Medicare, you get a year after that. That's also Social Security Administration. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 departments so far. Section 8. I moved out to Jersey in 2014 to get my Section 8 voucher. All this kerfluffle happened because they became a sanctuary state, and a migrant moved into my building, and they came after me because I'm smart or something, and I knew that these people, where they're from, and that made me a racist. And they're white people, but I knew where they're from. I
Maureen,
understand.
Maureen,
Like-
I'd like the list. I need you to ask your question though, okay? Because we want to get other
Okay,
folks in.
and HEAP, which we don't get anymore, is
No,
the Department of Energy.
Maur-
So
Maureen, your question.
what are we going to do about streamlining this?
Yeah.
Elon Musk, to quote him, Nikola Tesla proved that electricity can be free. The MTA spends all this money on new things to get fares when they could, if they just made it free like it is in Europe.
Maureen, is your
How are we
question
gonna
is
streamline?
streamline? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Also,
Okay, hold
because
on. Let
I
Sean.
want to put a coda on my
Yeah.
question though, Mark.
Yeah.
The thing is, we're a sanctuary city, and
Yeah.
Donald Trump did try to sue us.
I think he's
We
gonna
are
try
an
again.
insurrectionist city.
Okay, Maureen, hold on. All right, Sean, what about streamlining
Sean, I
federal
want you to
programs?
answer.
Sean and then Dan. Thank you, Maureen.
Look, I have high hopes for the effort. Doge, as I was schooled on, I think last night, that Elon and Vivek are going to run. I think that these guys, we need some outside look at government. And one of the things that's funny, I was the budget committee spokesman for 3 years. This idea that if you're not spending more, you're slashing and burning. And I would ask you to keep an eye on those keywords, because when you make things more efficient or effective, that's not slashing or cutting. That's actually just making them more effective. And I think we should welcome that in our government right now. And to your point, we'll see how far this goes. I think there's a lot of overlap that should occur, or that should be eliminated, where you've got different departments doing virtually the same thing, but having a different piece of the pie. I have high hopes that those two individuals will put forth a great effort. But I will just say, Washington fights back very hard. President Trump calls it the swamp, the bureaucracy, the contractors. This is that's their lifeblood, is the inefficiencies, the spending, et cetera. So I hope they're successful. I think we need fresh eyes. We haven't had something real effective since the Grace Commission. And I hope that what they can do is bring effectiveness, efficiencies, and redundancies, et cetera, to government. And there's no two better people to lead this right now, but fingers are crossed.
Thank you, Maureen. All right, appreciate it. Meghan McCain and Blaine Gilmore are both here. Meghan first, because she's in a mobile situation, and then Blaine. Meghan, welcome. What's on your mind?
Thank you so much for hopping me in. I was just doing mom stuff. I'm in my car.
Delighted to have you here.
I was watching on my phone, and I just want to ask Sean and Dan, because you seem very bullish on Matt Gaetz being confirmed. In fact, all three of you do. And have you talked to any of the women in your life that have daughters about these sexual assault allegations? The one against Pete I found a little shocking, given that there's apparently photo evidence of bruised thighs. That seems like a big thing, and he did pay her off. I also think with the Matt Gaetz situation, the allegations, I don't understand why Speaker Johnson is refusing to release the ethics reports. I do feel like the American public has a right to know. People are saying it's all fake. I'm just asking questions. I do feel like the American public has a right to know if, he engaged in illegal sexual behavior. And then I still, I'm always worried about women in general. I'm always worried about conservative women. And I just think there's always this picking at the idea, and we still lost women. More women went for Harris, or white women, I guess, than Trump. Is it a problem that two of your 5 nominees have very credible sexual assault allegations, or is just this really doesn't matter anymore because Trump also had allegations, and just you can credibly sexually assault a woman and it just doesn't really matter anymore? Is that where we're at as a society? And I don't like Matt Gaetz. I don't think he should be confirmed, but like I said, that's the only really dog I have in that fight. So that's my question for everybody.
Yeah.
So
I'll go first. we made a mistake in being too cavalier about the charges. We've been talking in shorthand about confirmation, but there's serious charges against both of them, and they should be fully investigated and considered in the context of the nomination. Both men deny the charges against them. Neither has been indicted, neither has been sued, neither has been charged with proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and so they're entitled to that as well. But we shouldn't have been so cavalier about it, and we should consider the fact that the charges are serious, and again, they should be fully investigated. And those are not the only reasons why some people have serious doubts about both nominees' fitness for the jobs, but those are front and center, and they should be considered. Sean.
Yeah, I would just echo what Mark said, that first of all, we were talking in shorthand about whether or not they'll make it or not whether or not the charges are credible or not. And so I lead with echoing what Mark said. Second, I think we've seen from the left a very interesting double standard. So when there were charges and allegations made against President Biden during the campaign, they were blown off. When allegations are made against people on the left, they were blown off. I think we have a standard.
Sean, let me add to that. Bill Clinton spoke at the convention.
Right. I mean,
and was honored at the convention.
Fair. That's all very fair.
Right.
Yeah. That's all very fair.
I didn't hear any I didn't see any Democrats walk out of the convention when Bill Clinton spoke. Sean.
So I think that a lot of folks on our side go, you know what, you guys only seem to care when our charge goes in one direction. To your question, Megan, though, first, I have heard from women and it said, do you feel comfortable with this and whatever? And my answer is, if there's an issue, if it comes out in confirmation, then we'll take it up. But I think we need to let the process play out. But I agree with you. I think that is definitely something that women have been bringing up probably more than men, although I don't want to make it sexist. I think men can be equally concerned about the charges. But we'll see how this goes. I mean, I think there's a big difference between an allegation and it happening. So I will say this, the one thing on the speaker, on Speaker Johnson, that it is not the speaker's prerogative, and he has said this clearly, to release or not release an ethics report. It's up to the committee to do that. And the speaker is prohibited from actually interacting for obvious reasons. The speaker could not be going in and putting their finger on reports and saying, release this one, don't release this one, guilty, not guilty. And so the speaker has made it clear that it is not his job, but his opinion is that the precedent of the House should be maintained, that if you are not a member of the House, the report should not be released. That being said, I have a feeling that we started off by talking about leaks and Joe and Mika down there. I would bet some decent money that something gets leaked out, and or the Dems on the Senate Judiciary Committee call the woman to either privately testify, or that there's word that her lawyer has made me contact. So look, my guess is that the process will work itself out. It always does. But I think that no one worried about the reports on everyone else. And I think Matt is, whether it's serious or not, he is not a member of Congress. And we're going down a very slippery slope if we say the House can now release a report on anyone it wants, private citizen or not. That will get weaponized real quick.
Dan?
Yeah, and I also just want to say, I was like, I'm not a Me Too person. I got a lot of heat for a long time thinking that it was basically like, I don't believe in the movement. I think it actually did more damage to women than anything else. It's more that, I was shocked to read that Pete had paid off someone. Like, to me, that says something. At least an incident did happen. I just think it's, you're talking about people in like the absolute highest echelons of power in America. And again, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it will come out. I'm just surprised how much we've gone from the Kavanaugh hearings to things like this, where it really doesn't seem to matter anymore.
Well, I think I think it does matter. I mean, I think Megan, my wife, and I were talking about Gates this morning, and when I said I think he may get confirmed, she had your reaction. Like, are you kidding me? Like, and she's not a very political person. She has a day job. Like, she reads the newspapers, etc. So I do think it'll be an interesting thing to watch, which is what is the reaction of women, female senators. What's her name? Joni Ernst from Iowa. Others about how they feel. I think the speaker, with all due respect to Sean, is not just anybody. When he speaks in the House, his words carry more weight than a backbencher. So I think, it's no probably coincidence that the speaker's job depends on staying in the good graces of Donald Trump between now and that vote in the beginning of Congress. So I think the speaker is very aware that if the president wants Gates, he would be wise to not get cross with him. To me, the bigger issue, and the reason that I say what I did, and Sean said this earlier, is my sense from watching the right and watching the kind of online army is that they loathe the Department of Justice. That is the one that they want reforms. They kind of want scalps, to use a probably bad analogy, but they want change. And the fact that Gates is controversial, they don't care. And if the Democrats lock in and actually drop Oppo research the way they did against Kavanaugh, I think it'll put Republicans in a tighter bind, because what MAGA is going to say is, you're with Elizabeth Warren or you're with Donald Trump. And that is very, very difficult place at the start of a Congress. And that's why I just think when you look at the chessboard, again, they're very serious allegations. I think drug use is another, like, sounds like he's been in rooms where a lot of drugs have been used, whether he did or not. It's a little worrisome.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, correct. Sorry.
Mark,
but I mean, I just think the raw politics of
how many people in the Biden administration do you think have been in rooms where illegal drugs were used? How many?
Look, and the president's own son, and he was attacked, and it made people question whether Biden was honest, and he was good, and the Democrats said Trump and his kids were corrupt. Like, it put a stain on that made it hard.
But forget Hunter. Hunter's an extreme case. How many cabinet secretaries in this administration do you think have ever been in a room where people have smoked pot? How many?
Probably every one of them. And some of them probably do smoke pot, by the way.
Correct.
Hey,
Yeah,
can
Sean.
I want two quick points, since we did a job thing last night. Pro tip for folks who may either be interested or know someone. While it may be legal to use pot in several states, it is still against the law federally, and is a big problem on your SF-86. So I have heard enough people who are applying for jobs go, well, I only did it in Colorado, or I did it in, I'm like, well, guess what? In the United States, it's still against the law. The second thing is, and Megan, I want to just preface this by saying your question about the Hegseth alleged payoff. I have, in the last 7 years, unfortunately seen been part of too many party to or witness of or deposed in countless lawsuits. And what I've learned that I didn't realize as much probably 7 or 8 years ago was that there are times when the lawyers sit there and say, here's the current situation. This is what it's going to cost to litigate this out or to defend yourself, or this is what might come out if we do this, or we can make a settlement for X amount, that whatever. And so I'm not saying or
the comms person says, if this comes out, even if it's false, it'll ruin your career.
Correct. And so I say that with all due respect to the charges, and I'm not trying, but I, as an individual, would have said the same thing you said 7 years ago, where, oh my God, they pled the fifth, they're guilty, or they acted this way. I have seen, the Mueller investigation, I can't begin to tell you how, like, there was an instance where somebody leaked out something that was completely non-germane, and I get a call from my lawyer and said, okay, they just subpoenaed that, and that probably was 10 hours of going through documents at $1,500 per one lawyer plus the paralegal. And so, when people don't get letters about going up to Congress, you probably spend 5 to 10 hours prepping with your lawyer at least $1,000, probably closer to $2,000 an hour. So I have a very different mentality now about some of these allegations and what you do than I did a while ago, before I realized how much lawyers really cost, and their paralegals and the other people who work there.
Yes. And the meter runs relentlessly. Megan, thank you for joining as always. And thank you for raising the point you did. Very much appreciate it. Blaine, one of our favorites. Welcome back in Georgia.
Hey,
what's on your mind, sir?
Well, I just think seeing all this with what just happened, talking about the drug talk, and then Mark, you picking up a 2-liter Diet Coke, I may have been on one of the more entertaining things right there of two-way, not even saying a word. So that was entertaining to me. But just wanted to say, it says Trump 3X down there at the bottom. So 3-time Trump voter. As I preface what I'm going to talk about, neither one of those times, or none of those times, I was just super excited to vote for Trump. I was excited to vote against the left because of what matters most to me, and that is from a person of faith. If there was one single, if Hillary Clinton, if Joe Biden, or if Kamala Harris, if any of them had any type of way to go about talking about any restraints on abortion, talking about any pushback on the trans issue stuff, anything like that, I think it would have won more of the faith vote. You see, Kamala lost the most of the faith vote. I'm not just talking about Protestant and Christian. I'm not talking about just Catholic or Jewish or Muslim. All of it went more towards the right with Trump. Why is that? We're not disillusioned to think that he's, the Pope, Jesus Christ, or the Easter Bunny. Okay, we don't think any of that. But what we do think is that the policies are what we're having to look at, because overall this world is a broken world. Everybody's flawed. We're in need of mercy and grace and forgiveness, and you got to stop evil the most that you can, in our opinion, with the policy. So, Dan, my question to you is, knowing that, and knowing that people who are not of faith, as I'm looking at the exit polls right now, they went up the most for Democrats since Obama in 2012. So there seems to be a faith gap here. With what's happened with Pete Hegseth, like the AP criticizing one of his tattoos, calling him a Christian nationalist, with the lady coming on MSNBC, and then with Kamala saying you don't have to abandon your faith to believe women have the right to abortion, all this kind of stuff. How do you think the left goes about messaging to the faith community, not maybe bending on their values, but also not just being totally affront to people of faith?
If
Great
they
question.
want to win national elections and they want to compete in all 50 states, they will respect and communicate with people of faith. And I think one of the people who's done it the best in the last 40 years was Bill Clinton, because he was born in Arkansas and came of age politically in a southern state where people of faith are prominent, and he knew that he needed to be respectful and engaged, not just on the way he talked, but on the substance of what the issues are. And I think that part of that starts with our party not saying we're right, you're wrong, right? That you can only be like right now, if you're pro-life and you're pro-choice, which party seems more tolerant? Like Donald Trump was saying, I'll be good for women, and I'm not going to ban abortion, and I'm going to provide free IVF. And, you would feel a little like, okay, if I'm pro-choice, he's at least saying things that could be appealing to me. In our party, it is, you are pro-choice, period. Like there is no room in the tent for anybody else, because then you're seen as, and that is a problem. And it's not, as you said, it's not just on abortion. It obviously applies to a lot of different issues and substance.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I'm not disillusioned that I think it's ever going to become a nationwide ban or anything like that on abortion, or banning anything with LGBTQ, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying, nor do I think that just because my faith is that and I believe a certain thing that necessarily should. I just think that even Barack Obama, when he was running for president, he handled these issues in a way that said, hey, I'm cognizant of how you feel about this, and I'm going to try to govern in a way. Now, all chaos seemed to break loose with the Supreme Court rulings after his presidency, much as it did with Trump's, because of how he won. But I just think there's got to be a way for people to say, okay, I understand that you have your faith, and I'm not going to call you a bigot or a cult member or all this kind of stuff because of what matters to you. And I think that's how we get along.
Blaine, how do you feel about the apparently pro-choice nominee that had HHS, Bobby Kennedy?
I mean, listen, I'm not just, like I said, I'm not disillusioned about it. And I also know that, okay, he heads HHS, but because of what's been done, it's a state by state referendum and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to conflate the two. I'm also not going to say I was not happy at all with Donald Trump's flip flopping and going back and forth on abortion. But I will say this, I mean, at least there's some recognition there of him saying, hey, we got to have a limit of some sort type, when time after time people would ask the question to Kamala, to Joe Biden, they won't say that, they won't even approach where the cutoff is. They won't say, they'll just dodge it completely. And I think that has to there's a humane issue there, in my opinion, about this.
If President Trump had run all his nominees by you before he announced them, would you have told him advised against any of them?
Yeah, I would have, just because I'm more
Which ones are you not in favor of?
I'm not thrilled with Matt Gaetz at all.
Why? Why?
Because of some of his personal things that I've seen floated out there. But on the other hand, if I didn't know anything about Matt Gaetz, I would say, if I just, like Sean said, looked at his viral clips and how he attacked DOJ and how he did all that and how he's America first, I'd be all about it, but you just kind of play the two about those things.
Sean, you want to take the opportunity to ask Blaine a question, or just
first of all, I want to thank you for raising that. Last cycle we saw, last time Trump was in, we saw a nominee, a Catholic nominee, be questioned because of their participation and affiliation with the Knights of Columbus. The idea that Pete has a Jerusalem cross on his chest, which, we could go down countless rabbit holes on Christian doctrine here. I find just, go after him on his policies if there's some evidence that he associated with some group or whatever. But this is this attack on what can no longer, I mean, it's just on Catholic faith is just, it's getting to a line where I think it's unhealthy. And just kind of frankly disgusting from where some of this comes from. If you have a problem with his views or his policies or his background, fine. But the idea of saying because you put Jerusalem cross is sort of a bridge too far. And I will say one more thing on Bobby at HHS. I agree. I'm a little concerned about somebody there's a lot more that goes on beyond just the top Roe v. Wade on people who support life. There's a lot that HHS does in terms of funding and research and things like that. But I will say that one, every nominee is there because they get President Trump's agenda, not because of their own. And I think Bobby Kennedy understands that. Trump has also made clear jokingly that he knows what his lane is. And then number 3 or 4, whatever I am now, that this comes down to, there will be deputies and administrators within the department. You saw Ben Carson potentially as Surgeon General, who will protect life and stand up for life.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say I'm not under any way saying that Gaetz and Hegseth and all these guys shouldn't get a hearing. I want them to get the hearing. I want them to be asked the question. I don't want recess appointments. I mean, I want it to be done. You got 53 senators. You might as well do it the right way. Try to get it done the right way. But I will say that that's the whole, I think, misconception of people of faith anyways. They think, well, how can you support anybody, whether it's a nominee or whether it's a candidate or somebody that has all these things? Just look at it from our point of view. We understand, hey, the world is broken. Everybody's in need of grace and forgiveness. And that's where we come from on this stuff. So
thank you, Blaine. Always like having you on. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Maxim, welcome, and tell folks where you are, who you voted for president, if you'd like to, and what's on your mind.
Sure. And by the way, thanks for calling me. This is actually the first time I've logged into the Zoom. I usually watch on YouTube.
Thank you for joining.
I'm also in Georgia, but I really just moved here, I guess, like 5 months ago from New Jersey. Really love it down here. You can actually say what you think a little bit more, especially if you're on a certain side of things. So I did vote for Trump, and I am a 3-time Trump voter, but I never actually supported him in any of the contested primaries. I think I supported at least 6 of the other candidates in 2016, and then Nikki Haley this time. My question is, and I've just been wondering about this. So, he's in a second term. He's not going to be running again. So how is he thinking about it? Because it's one thing is, is he thinking about it as, okay, this is my last shot to make the real change that's needed, and he's thinking about his legacy and everything like that? Or is he thinking, I need to lay the groundwork for Don Jr. or one of his other kids to potentially make a run in the future? Because I think he might make different policy decisions depending on which way he's thinking.
Yep, great question. Sean is uniquely qualified to answer, so we'll let Sean answer. Maxim, thank you. Sean.
I think that A year ago, I would have said Don is probably the only one. Now Laura has really shown her colors. She did a phenomenal job as RNC co-chair. And the question is, what does she want to do? I think there's always going to be speculation about Don. I think he really enjoys his life. I mean, he goes out, he's super helpful to the cause. He's very involved in like environmental and hunting type of thing. I think he likes the freedom to travel and to support, but I would never suppose to speak for Don Jr. or the president anymore. That being said, I can see Laura equally getting appointed to something or running for something, continuing on at the RNC. Those are the only two that I think, or Barron when he gets old enough, that I see doing anything. I think the rest, Eric has been very focused on the business, and I think that's always like his shtick. So I think it's going to come down to Laura and or Don Jr. And if I had to put money on it, I would say Laura goes into public to elected office before Don.
Yeah, but
Laura's
in
going to be
terms
the
of
senator from Florida. Go ahead.
You know, by the way, I will tell you, total side note, I think that I put this out on Twitter when the rumors were Marco, is that at the very least, DeSantis is going to have to make sure that his approval, his pick is approved by Team Trump. It's his pick, obviously, but I wouldn't put it past. I would not be surprised to see Laura as the pick. And I tweeted out that there could be a Trump, and
I think it will be her. I think it'll be her. Max, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was more wondering, like, how is President Trump thinking about it in terms of, like, is he going to be thinking, I need to lay the groundwork for, let's say, a Laura Trump to become president in 4 years, or is he thinking more about, okay, we got to fix the tariff system?
Yeah, he's not. He doesn't. I think he's worried more about his own legacy. Obviously, with JD, that's I actually think if DeSantis picked Laura or Don, right, you could have a potential where JD runs and then they're the VP. But I don't think he's thinking, like, right now he's focused probably more about his own agenda, his own legacy, than he is 10 years down the road.
He wants the economy to boom and there'd be world peace and to get on Mount Rushmore. And I think that subsumes everything else is subsumed by that. Maxim, thank you. Go ahead, Dan.
Great.
I was going to say, my sense from this Democrat is he lives to win the day's headline and maybe tomorrow's headline, and he worries about 2 days from now, 2 days from now. I cannot fathom that he's thinking, how is history going to judge me 10 years from now? And I think he wants everyone to beg him for his endorsement in 4 years. He wants to be king. He wants to, like to public opinion. He wants the whole party to be what Joe and Mika did, begging for his endorsement leading into, Iowa or South Carolina.
Yeah. All right. So in addition to Megan, we had 3 Trump voters today. Again, I called on Maxim, didn't know who he was for. That's just the way it happens. We encourage Trump and Harris supporters, and people didn't vote for either, to join us regularly. And we want always to have as much of a balance of voices in totality as we can. Wednesday night, Dan, who's joining us on Wednesday night on Two-Way Tonight?
I am not sure, Mark. Who do we
Yes,
have?
you are. We have a congressman, Richie Torres,
awesome.
is joining us on Tuesday night for our Wednesday night for D Future. So look forward to that. Before Wednesday, tonight, I'll be here 6:00 Eastern time for my show, Two-Way Tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. And then tomorrow night, join us at 4:00 for a VIP reception, and then 5:00 in Greenwich Village at the Comedy Cellar, Village Underground, morning meeting after dark. We're doing a normal program live for everyone present. You can get tickets, go to twoway.tv to learn more about how to buy them and when the show is. But again, it's 5:00, and that'll be Two-Way Tonight for tomorrow night. It'll stream on YouTube if you can't be here in person. But please join us if you are in New York, get a chance to meet everybody and spend some time together. And again, I'll see you tonight at 6, and the 3 of us will be back tomorrow at 9 Eastern time. Gentlemen, have a great day. Sean, you've got your reporting assignment. We want to know who the Sherpas are. So bring that back tomorrow. We want 5 Sherpas for 5 controversial 5. Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks Megan for chiming in. All the people who asked questions, raise your hands, and we'll see you tonight at 6 Eastern.